Hey, profs. Welcome on in. My name's Rob Lightfoot, proud two-time alum of Rick Edelman College of Communication, class of 2000-2001. This is Beyond the Brown and Gold.
I'm Jessica Kanady. I'm the co-host here, also a two-time proud Rowan alum, class of 2008 from the Rick Edelman College of Communication and Creative Arts, and 2015 from the College of Education. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Rowan Radio 89.7 WGLS FM presents Beyond the Brown and Gold, a show that highlights the lives and memories of Glassboro State and Rowan University alumni. Now, here are your hosts, Rob Lightfoot and Jessica Kanady.
On today's show, we had Dr. Neel Aziz join us. He's a supervisory veterinary pathologist for the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute in both our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and Front Royal, Virginia.
We talked to Neel about Rowan, Asia, animals, and the Smithsonian. It all makes sense. It doesn't sound like it makes sense.
Yeah,
but
it does. But it's all a very linear path to what we know Dr. Neel Aziz as today. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. He was such a pleasure to talk to. So fun, really fun to always hear about an alum's history and all the different experiences they've had. So we are looking forward to not only hearing Dr. Neel's story, but that of all of our alums that we connect with on this podcast. So thanks so much for joining us. We hope you enjoy this interview as much as we did. Okay, I think the most important thing we should start with, because it was the first thing I noticed when we started, is, Neel, you have a Ninja Turtle background. So you have the most interesting and fun background. Yeah. Tell me, who is your favorite Ninja Turtle and why? Or maybe why do you have the Ninja Turtles?
My favorite Ninja Turtle right there is Raphael.
Okay. Which color is he?
He's the red one.
Okay.
And I liked him because he was me growing up. You know, he could operate with his friends or he could be independent. But he also, you know, as a young kid growing up, you don't understand life. And he didn't understand the role about the turtles and the brotherhood and Splinter's role as their father, mentor type of individual in their life. And he also had a lot of things like internal demons he was trying to deal with, trying to come at peace with himself. He was the maddest of them all. So I always liked Raphael because, you know, as you're growing up, you're mad at things. Why can't I have this or why can't I have that? But he always came back, right? He always came back to the group. So I like being able to work independently, but also work with my brother. So that's why he's my favorite.
I love that your background has like really deep meaning. I did not anticipate that.
No, I was a Michelangelo guy growing up. Can I just share that?
Yeah,
man, he was the party guy that just liked to have pizza. That's all he wanted to do was eat pizza. What kid didn't want to do that?
My husband was into Leonardo, and now we have a son, Leo. So it's,
that's pretty cool.
Really after my grandfather, but my husband would say the Ninja Turtle for sure. So yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So tell us more about, you mentioned about, you know, being mad and hanging out with your friends and kind of being wherever you could be and however you could be with the different groups. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a variety of places, from the Bronx to Lawnside, New Jersey. And I spent a lot of time in the Philadelphia area. So a lot of different friends in different places, you know, a lot of family members, you know, blood and non-blood, but, you know, people that I held dearly in different areas. So, you know, when you're young and you're moving around, you know, you have to go and try to find new friends. Sometimes you don't find new friends, you know, and then you have to operate individually, you know, and then you're mad and then you go back home to the Bronx or you go back and find your cousins, you know, in Queens, or you go find your cousins, you know, in Maryland, and you're back with family. So, you know, grew up in a variety of places.
How did you find Rowan and all of that?
The simple word is email. That's how I found Rowan. This is back in 91, 92.
Your America Online account? Is that what you're talking about?
No. Let the story unfold. This is great. You won't even believe this. So I was in high school, misguided, but it was the summer. So I was in this program called PRIME, the Philadelphia Regional Introduction of Minorities to Engineering. And they had it was at various campuses, in college campuses in Jersey. And then, you know, when you became, right before your senior year, they were going on campus. You know, you're going to stay for like 4 weeks and you're going to be like, you know, staying at college. And for me at that time, college was daunting. You know, I was probably 15 at the time. I didn't know what a bachelor's degree was, what a master's was, what a doctorate was. I didn't apply myself in high school. I was smart. I just didn't apply myself for various reasons. So, you know, going to college was like a thing that I was like very scared about. So I'm like, all right, well, we can go to college for a week. Let's see what this is about. They're going to treat us like college students. So we get out to Rowan, and it was a blast, right? You stayed, I think it was Mullica. It wasn't Evergreen. It's the one to the left of Evergreen. and you're having fun. You got kids your age from all parts of Central and South Jersey, and they're teaching you all this science stuff, which is pretty cool. At the time I was heavily into, good science and math. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you can go to the computer lab. You're 15 years old. What we're doing in the computer lab. But I was already computer inclined. And I could program my butt off. So I would get there and try to see what they had on the computer. Like I always wanted to make my own video games. So I was programming video games. But then I never knew about email and instant messaging. And I was like, oh, this is great. So we would sit in that computer lab for hours and not go back to the dorms, and all we would do is instant message the person that's sitting next to you. And that's when Rowan would show,
your
would
away
show
message.
You
Those were
right. It would show you
important.
who was on and what at what computer lab, and you could send a little message and it pop up at the bottom of the screen. That was so much fun to us. When it came down to colleges, I was about 16, about when I was about to graduate from high school. My mother and father, there was that discussion of where I was going to go, and then I had a discussion with myself where I wasn't going to go, and then all three of us came together, and it was like, somebody had to put down the ace of spades, somebody put down the king, somebody put down the joker, and so I was like, I really wanted to go to schools in the city, right? I wanted to go to Lehman, wanted to go to St. John's, wanted to go to Hunter College, but then I wanted to go to Tuskegee, wanted to go to University of Florida. I wanted to get away from them, but 16 years old, there's nothing I could do, and so I said, let me go to the school with email. Because it's further enough from both of my parents, but close enough for them to get there. They were still debating on what I was going to do, and I had some money, and I just went ahead and I paid my what was that fee to secure your spot in the residence hall?
Yeah, your application.
Yeah, your deposit. Yeah, I paid that, and they were like, "You're not going to Rowan." I'm like, "Well, I already paid the deposit," and it was silent for about an hour, but I'm here.
Were you living in Lawnside at the time?
Yeah, I was living in Lawnside at the time, sure.
So we kept you in South Jersey. You didn't get back to the city, I guess, but you did get to Tuskegee.
Yeah, I did eventually get to Tuskegee. That was after Rowan, so that was cool. Change of pace. Southern Alabama, very, very, very big change of pace.
Let me just ask you, Neel, too, about the background that you came from. Are you the first in your family to go to college, or did your other family members?
My father went to college, and my sister. So, I'm probably the
third generation. We have a program here called Flying First, and we recognize all of our students that are first-gen students.
Oh, wow.
Now, we have in our system that you were an EOF student. Were you involved in the EOF program?
That EOF MAP program saved my life. Rest in peace, Mr. Myers. I was involved in that. I can't speak it. I don't think we have enough time on this program for me to talk about that EOF MAP program. It was. I'll tell you this, when I say I was misguided, it wasn't that somebody led me astray. I just didn't understand college. I didn't understand education. I didn't, you start looking at jobs and, you're a little kid, you don't know. And I say little kid, meaning, late teenager, you don't know how much $30,000 is. You don't know how much $70,000 is. You don't know how much that correlates, cost of living across states. You don't know what degree you need for what profession, you're just like, why am I going to school? I was like, high school was rough. Why am I going to college? Anyway, you get to this EOF MAP program, and they were teaching us how to study, teaching us, how to be better college students, teaching us how to think about internships and professionals and career. And I'm like, man, I'm just trying to play Nintendo.
Favorite
and
game?
Favorite game at that time probably was on the Nintendo was Tecmo Bowl. And so at that time, you go through the program, you meet these, these, what do you call it? Your counselors, they finished the year before you, so they're like sophomores. And Mr. Myers and Miss Williams, they put together a cadre of good, let's say, mentors that were already students, and then people that would consistently work the program. But it's one of those things where you feed steak to a baby. You just didn't appreciate it at that time. But again, I was young, just turned 17, and so then after being in school for about 2.5 years, Mr. Myers, I was playing around. Mr. Myers called me one day and said, "Hey, you need to come meet with us in the student center." Like, why am I meeting with them in the student center at 7:30 at night? And so he had this group of, let's say EOF all-stars. These are, students who were dedicated. They were doing their work, knocking out grades, going to class and everything. And he was taking them to a student leadership conference, the National Black Student Leadership Conference in Virginia. And so I was confused. I'm sitting there like, why am I here? I was like, I know he's not taking me. So, am I, loading the bus? Like, what's going on? And so Mr. Myers, very instrumental in that EOF MAP program. He selected me to go to this leadership conference, which is in Marriott in Richmond, Virginia. And at that time, it was probably 1,000 students, African-American students from all over America. And I had never, ever met. Now, I'm a biology major at Rowan and computer science major at Rowan. And I had never, ever met, another, let's say, just not even person of color. I've never met a Black person that even was remotely interested in science. So then when I get to this leadership conference, I'm meeting people and they're like, oh, I got a 3.8 GPA. I want to be a neurosurgeon. Huh? I don't even know my GPA. And it was awe-inspiring because they also were student leaders. Right. But then we also think that a lot of times that student leaders are kind of, lame or corny. No, these were, fraternity people. These were, athletes. These were people that, to me, debunked the myth of what a picture perfect college students were. They weren't, quote unquote, just only studying. Right. So that showed me a big diversity. I mean, it was over 1,000 students in this Marriott. And I said, OK, this is great. And I came back up on the bus, and Mr. Myers, it was an open position for a student organization, and they needed a leader. And Mr. Myers was like, looking at me, him and Miss Peterson, like I was supposed to run. I'm like, why are they looking at me? Like, I have no leadership capabilities. I don't even know what my GPA is. But that, I don't know how long that ride must have been, maybe 6 or 8 hours from Richmond back to Rowan, just talking to Mr. Myers and Miss Peterson. They talked to me at their level, right? They talked to me like I was one of them. Let's say we're the same age, the same level, and they got my mind right. What did I need to do at Rowan and how I could do it? And, and I saw, okay, I was like, I need to get into the student leadership. I need to start belonging, start getting active in college and realize that you can have fun, but I need to make sure that I'm growing as an individual. And this is what, at that time, and I'm pretty sure it's even better now, Rowan allowed a lot of growth for you as a college student. Through student organizations, through different programs, through different on-campus jobs. And so that's why I say Mr. Myers and Miss Williams and that EOF, and Miss Peterson, of course, that EOF MAP program saved my life. Because, I was sitting in Chestnut, 179, looking at that lake, playing Sega Genesis at the time. And they gave me a call and said, hey, you need to come to the Student Leadership Conference. And after that, I got my act together. And, I went from not knowing my GPA to getting one of those one of those letters that say, hey, you coming to this banquet tonight. I'm like, what is this for? I just disregarded it. And I saw a couple students on the yard. They said, you coming? I'm like, what was coming to where? They said the banquet. I don't know if it was the president's banquet or a dean's banquet. I'm like, I got a letter about that, but what is that for? They're like, you got over 3 point whatever GPA. They're honoring you. And I'm like, did I? Again, I had no idea what. I knew I was doing good, but I didn't stop to look, right? I was focused. I was behind the A game. I got to get my biology down pat. And I went there for the very first time. And I don't know if I ever say I felt like I accomplished something in life, but I will say sitting there, and I believe it was President James. It had to be President James. Either President James or dean of student standing there saying somebody was congratulating me about academic excellence. Was like, I might have did something,
Well, Neel, let me ask you. So I'll ask the question because I think there's students that want to kind of want the same thing here. What did you want to be when you grew up? Like, you have this computer science bio background. Like, what were you gearing towards?
So at an early age, we grew up in the Bronx. It was around that time Ronald Reagan came to the Bronx and said the Bronx looked like they dropped a nuclear bomb on it. So the Bronx was burning. The BBC had did that documentary. So it was an urban, jungle. And at that time, I could read very well, far advanced for my age. And they took me to Bronx Zoo, which is like a solstice in the middle of the South Bronx. No burning. You go from burning cars, burning buildings, and you go inside the Bronx Zoo, and it's elephants, it's giraffes, it's proboscis monkeys. It was like you were magically transported to this place. And I'm like, what is this? They're like, these are animals. I'm like, oh, I thought animals were Rottweilers and stray cats. And now you're seeing what I saw at the time on Channel 13, these public broadcast documentaries. You see animals, from Africa, from Asia, from South America. You start learning about conservation efforts. You start learning about, illegal animal trafficking. And then I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So at a very early age, I was very interested in animals. I wanted to be a zoologist. And then I morphed into a veterinarian. So by the time I stepped foot on Rowan, I'll never forget it. I was in the EOF MAP program still that summer. And they went around the room, asked everybody what they wanted to be. And it was a very joyful room. We were all getting to know each other. And, you start hearing common occupations, lawyers, teachers, lawyers, And they said, what do you want to be? And I stood up and I was like, I want to be a veterinarian. I remember the room just got quiet. Everybody looked at me like, huh?
Yeah, you're in the wrong spot.
And I sat down. Yeah. Like, really? A veterinarian? And
Well,
that
now
was
we're
it.
going to have a vet school, so you were ahead of your time. Did you get involved in anything besides the EOF program or anything while you were here, anything that kind of prepped you? Because it seems like you came in knowing what you wanted to do.
So getting my act together meant really actively getting involved on campus. And like I said, growing and maturing as an actual student. So things that I thought were silly, which weren't, started to become normal for me. So I was quasi-active in the biology club. I became a student leader in the NAACP, National Association for Colored People, the student activity boards, SGA, student government. So I started, applying and started going to those type of meetings. Started going to all the multicultural meetings. So I was basically one of those, let's just say, a student center staple from like 3:30 to 6. I was going to all types of meetings. When you go to the meetings, button-up shirt, dressing for success, as they would say. I also was involved in my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I also was involved with this little organization that was that had just opened and moved from the old library to across 322. And I forget what the name of that hall is, but it was a little organization at the time. It had over 100-something people. It was called 89.7 WGLS.
Oh, we don't know anything about that place.
You don't know anything about that. So I got an FCC license through them back in the day. So the radio station, fraternity, student clubs, organizations. Yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Oh, that's it? That's all you just did? That's all you did?
I was literally just involved in the radio station.
And that was exhausting.
And that was enough for me. But yeah, I mean, and I think that was probably an uncommon experience at that time. I think students today, like, they're involved in everything. It's almost like, I don't know how they can manage their schedule. But I think it's like, I was here in the early 2000s. I don't think people did that much then. So the fact that you were involved in so many things, that's really incredible.
None of my friends studied, so that probably explains a lot why I'm just kidding. So I want to kind of put a period on the end of the sentence. What did mom and dad think about after you graduated? I know they weren't a fan of you going to Rowan at the beginning.
Graduation was great, right? The concept of graduation was great, but one of the things we're always worried about, and I say we as biology majors, right, is that most people get in biology because that's the way. Okay, so you could do a non-traditional method, right? You could be an economics major and then take pre-med requisites, right? But most of us say, hey, we're going to biology. But you realize that after you bust your butt for biology, and if you don't get into a professional school or master's or PhD program, like what are you actually going to do with biology? And then how much are you going to get paid, right? So graduation was great, but it was like, what's the next step?
What's next? Yeah.
And what was next? So, to be 100% honest, sometimes I feel like if I do something, I'm complacent, right? So I didn't want to go to graduation because at that time I wasn't 100% in Tuskegee. So I thought it was like a false celebration. So my father didn't make it to graduation, but I just remember, living in Beau Rivage, Beau 11, and sleeping on the couch. And I got an angry knock at the door. And I thought it was our landlady's husband again. But I said, yeah, that's a whole nother story. But I realized the knock was coming from a short level at the door. Her husband was like 6'4". So I'm like, that's a short, is that a woman? And it turned out to be my mom, my grandma. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, sleeping. They're like, better get up, it's graduation. I'm like, I wasn't going. And my grandmother was like, better go for your mother. I'm like, I don't know if I had that cap and gown. Luckily, I was probably talking to one of my friends walking across campus who was graduating, and I somehow got measured for a cap and gown. Wow. So you can't say no to mom. She marched me into her van. We drove up to the student center. They're like, oh yeah, we got a cap and gown for you. And I sat through graduation, and I talked to my grandmother. She said my mother was happy, especially to see me that academic side kick in, and I actually knocked out the last 2.5 years. So yeah, she was happy, and I guess my father was happy. I never asked him.
So then you spent 4 years post-Rowan. You spent 4 years at Tuskegee.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk to us about life post-vet school.
You go Rowan, you go Tuskegee, post-Tuskegee. So I'm in the United States Army, active duty as a veterinary corps officer. The Army has a very long, storied history of, let's say, the AMED, the Army Medical Department. And that encompassed physicians, nurses, veterinarians, dentists, physician assistants, all different types of medical specialties like nutritionists. You think back to the very early conflicts. You always had Army nurses or Army doctors, right? And so way back in the day, Army veterinarians became involved with taking care of military animals, whether they were military working dogs, military mules, horses, and then also inspecting a lot of slaughterhouses that the Army was procuring food from. And then since they were procuring food from slaughterhouses, veterinarians know how to do food inspection. The Army put them over all type of food inspection, including like fresh fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. There's a lot of jokes about the Army, but I will tell you this, those old commercials of be all you could be were true. And the new commercials at my time when the Army Strong were true. You really push yourself to the limits. I was really exposed to medicine, human medicine, veterinary medicine at a high level. I learned a lot. I was highly trained, and it was great. A lot of pioneering of medicine, for various reasons happens in the military. A lot of pioneering of biomedical, research and development, or even just, for various reasons, technological development happens in the military. So you were exposed to a lot. You win free trips, whether you put yourself in a contest or not, to go to exotic places, do exotic things. You
looks
may
like
not
you
want to
went
be
on your resume that you went a lot of places.
Some of those places were after I got out of the military, and that was because of the military. Once you go overseas once for the military, that stigma of being scared to go overseas, leaves. And plus, you also, I'll speak specifically about the Army, right? You're a soldier, right? So you're trained to be a soldier. You're mentally tough. You're physically tough. So you're like, all right, well, nothing's gonna get me. I'll go to this country. I'll be okay. I can actually go to this country and live. My specialty, so I'm a veterinarian. My specialty of veterinary pathology was started by active duty Army officers and retired Army officers. So after 3 years, I get a call from a good friend of mine, good brother, Howie Wong, and he's telling me he has a project with Cornell University with his new employer, because he was a government vet, right? A regulatory government vet. Howie's now at City University of Hong Kong, and they have a project with Cornell University to build a veterinary school, Western standards in Hong Kong to service East Asian students so that they don't have to go to Australia, they don't have to go to the UK, they don't have to go to America. And I thought that was great, right? You get the Cornell backing, you get people who are highly trained, qualified in veterinary research, veterinary clinic, veterinary diagnostics, and then we could sit there and make a hub, because there's a lot of things that we should be doing research over there with the local community, right? I thought this was a blast. And so I, heartbroken, left Mahidol University and left Thailand, and then went to Hong Kong and worked at the City University of Hong Kong. And so we started to build the veterinary school from scratch. Not only are we talking about at the curriculum level, and the personnel level and equipment level, we're talking infrastructure wise. So I don't know how much you all know about Hong Kong, but I grew up watching the Shaw Brothers movies, right? So that all of that Samurai Sundays, all of that Kung Fu theater, all of the Saturday and Sunday martial arts, most of them are Shaw Brother movies. My favorite American musical group, the Wu-Tang Clan, they're named after the actual rebels in Wudong Mountains in China, but it was an actual movie called Shaolin versus Wu-Tang. So I moved to Hong Kong on the strength that I've always wanted to move to Hong Kong. I always wanted to see the first movie theater where Bruce Lee movie was ever shown. My task at the veterinary school was to take a Shaw Brothers teaching TV studio and make it into a laboratory, veterinary diagnostic laboratory in the middle of the urban jungle of Kowloon Tong. So that was a very interesting thing. And, again, now, like I said, there's a lot of professional growth. Like I never had a desire to be in higher education. I don't know anything about higher education. Next thing I know, I'm on committees.
That's how we end up here. We don't. Me and Rob could tell very different but similar stories of. We didn't think higher ed, I would say, never on the radar.
Yeah, never on the radar.
Never on the radar. But then when you're here and you love it, and then you can't leave.
Stay.
You're stuck because you love it.
When sitting there writing up a master's curriculum and then trying to present it to the head of all of the departments, it's like, okay, I've never done this. And I've got department heads who are, PhD, gazillion publications, chair professors, questioning, but in a good, because of their experience, what this master's, because we use the Commonwealth terms, right? Because Hong Kong was a British colony. What this MSc in aquaculture, what does it do for the vet school? What does it do for Hong Kong? What does it do for, how are you going to structure it? What's your evaluation for the students? And I'm like, man, I thought we wrote all this down. I think people have read this, right? Because they're educators, right? They're academics. And I was like, wow, there's science. There's a skill to every type of profession in the world, right? Which you don't really think about it, right? So
And how
that
full
was
circle too, that you were not really like, I don't know if college is for me, and then you're right in the curriculum.
That's it, 100% full circle. You hit it right on the money, because one night I'm looking at HVAC for the laboratory, right? Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and then I put that down because it was getting blurry, and then I go pick up the curriculum for the master's in aquaculture, and then also the curriculum for the veterinary school. So that was a blast, living in Hong Kong, getting the chance to walk the walk of the Shaw brothers, walking past Ronald Mead Shaw right before, he passed away, seeing some of my Shaw brothers heroes. And, Hong Kong is the Hollywood of the East, right? So they even have the Walk of Fame stars right there on the TST waterfront. So that was great. That was another, wake up every day is a challenge. Learn the language, learn the culture, learn where you are. And then, of course, teaching students, a lot of good brothers and sisters that adopted me over there in Hong Kong. And then, of course, getting the chance to cross the border, getting to go into mainland China. So I'm in Shanghai. I'm working at the CRO. And I liked it. I like Shanghai. Shanghai, wow, it was so much to see and do. But then, I get jaded sometimes. It was a lot of science there, and I was like, I don't know. I didn't feel like I was getting a challenge anymore. And I said, I called up Dr. Ward, who is a good mentor of mine. He's a very, very big, Dr. Jerry Ward, very big pioneer in veterinary pathology. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm giving up on veterinary. Not giving up. I'm stopped veterinary pathology. I'm packing up in Shanghai. I'm going to move to Tokyo, and I'm going to be, a manga artist. Like, I'd rather do that now. I've done a lot. I felt like I've done, good things in veterinary medicine. Now let me try to focus on this manga. And I got somebody in Hong Kong who's a good illustrator as well. I got these stories in my head. Let me just do this. And Dr. Ward said, no, come back. I got some jobs for you. I said, nah, Dr. Ward, I'm okay.
I'm staying here.
Yeah, I was like, I'm good. I'm going to go over there. I'm really going to live this. And then he and I exchanged emails back and forth. But then he finally said, hey, your dream job is open. And I said, what job? He's like, the Smithsonian, National Zoologic Conservation Biology Institute. So that's impossible. Jobs at these like this in America do not come open. Right. When I first was working in Thailand, I emailed the pathologist that was here, and he's like, oh, no, we don't have any opening. So when Dr. Ward told me that this was open, I was like, really? Okay. And then he, one thing led to another, and if you can imagine the geopolitical context, this is a federal job. So I had to go to a federal website, but I'm sitting in Shanghai.
They're like, what is he doing?
I was getting shut out by, the Chinese internet, and then I was getting shut out by the American internet. So I'm probably, I estimate, if I can remember accurately, probably took me between about 10 days to apply.
Wow.
Right, because I had
Thank goodness it was still up, because it's like jobs are posted for a minute and then they're down.
Like 2 weeks. I would have to enter a field and then try to save the application. Enter field, you're going through VPNs and things like that. And I remember just one night, like the computer just wouldn't turn on. I'm like, both governments are kicking me out because they're like, who is this undercover spy trying to fly through this thing? So, and I moved out of Shanghai, went back to my apartment in Thailand. I was packing up in Thailand, and then I got the email from my boss now, and he said he wanted to interview, wanted to do a phone interview or video interview, but the video interview didn't work. And I was like, okay. And Dr. Ward tried to tell me, he's like, Neel, it's the Smithsonian, there's gonna be so many people, don't bank on it. You're not gonna get the job there. Try this organization, try this organization. So, my boss called me, and that might be my first real interview really ever. And I'm preparing the Smithsonian, the Smithsonian Institute, the Fusion of Knowledge. It's a very premier institution. I'm preparing all night. I know they're going to ask me what kind of, conservation medicine projects I've been dealing with in Asia. How my grant writing skills, what is my education, vision, what kind of animals I've dealt with, what kind of diseases I dealt, I'm ready for all of that. First question they asked me, It's those, I guess it's like a website you can find at least those standard interview questions or corporate American questions, like, how do you resolve workplace conflict?
Oh, no.
Can you give us an example of your leadership? I'm like, workplace conflict?
Is this the Smithsonian? What's
I was like, I live in an age we don't have workplace conflict. The only conflict is, are we going to get rice or noodles? What are we eating for lunch? That was the only conflict. So I was not prepared for that. I felt I bombed the interview. I said, whatever. 2 or 3 days later, I'm in the middle of about to buy my ticket to Japan, and an email comes up from my boss, and it's like, hey, I don't know if I told you my previous email, but we want to fly you over for, the second interview. I'm like, your previous email, fly me over? I'm like, they want to fly me over I'm in Bangkok. Like, these guys are joking. But anyway, make a long story short, they flew me over, 3 or 4 day, 3-day interview, and they selected me. I got the job, and I've been here 4 years, and I walked into here as a student at Tuskegee. I was in my 4th year doing my externship here. And I remember walking in here, this place was kinetic. I didn't even know I knew the Smithsonian because I would get the magazines, because my father at a young age was trying to cultivate my science, natural history. I would get those magazines, the Audubon Society and Smithsonian. Yep. So I knew the Smithsonian. I knew it was a premier institution. But as a student, I didn't know at the time, like, they got a zoo. And I didn't know who I was walking in here with. Again, these people that were here were pioneers in the field, right? They pioneered zoo and wildlife pathology. They pioneered zoo medicine. I was just a young, humble kid who was in vet school in Alabama, happy to be up here when cool weather. And I saw how kinetic this place was. The cutting edge research and diagnostics that was being done on animals under our care, animals out in the world. They was diagnosing disease that was killing wild populations of animals. Chytrid. They were diagnosing and working these diseases characterized elephant endothelial tropic herpes virus, right? Which is a virus that affects the wild animals and our captive population in America. Very young animals, 2 years, 3-year-old elephants dying from this herpes virus. And I remember I said, wow, there's researchers, there's veterinarians, there's benchtop scientists, there's field scientists, there's paraprofessionals, there's veterinary technicians, there's medical technicians. And there was just a lot of KTE, a lot of knowledge transfer exchange. There were the zoo vets were upstairs, the diagnostic vets were downstairs. I'm like, man, I learned so much daily within that short time you're here. I said, this is it. You want to roll with the best, this is it. And I remember as a student, I kept saying that's the job I wanted to get. So when it was open, that's what diverted me from, fully buying that ticket to Japan and being over there right now and trying to, be my best manga artist. So I came here and I've been here for 4 years, and it's, a fantastic job. It's a good setup. There's a lot to do, and I'm actually giving back because, we have student programs. We have pathology student programs. We have zoo student programs. So we get 3rd and 4th year veterinary students. We also get conservation medicine students. So students in master's and PhD programs, with our George Mason School of Conservation. We've got a lot of, it's kinetic, it's Smithsonian, it's science. We got a lot of different centers underneath our institute, just the Zoo Institute. And we've got a lot of collaborating partners in South America, Asia, and Africa. So it's been a very interesting time being back here. Out of the 4 years, most of it has been COVID.
Yeah. How did that impact the work that you do?
Oh, it's been a very interesting time being back here. Out of the 4 years, most of it has been COVID.
Yeah. How did that impact the work that you do?
It was scary. It was depressing. It was abrupt, right? I still had friends in age, right? So I knew friends, was constant contact with them. So when it first broke out over there, I knew when they went in lockdown, and I kept saying, hey, this was going to come over here. We're going to need to be worried about it. We never, we as America never really took it serious. So when that one day, I believe it was like a Wednesday, they're like, hey, everything's shut down. It's COVID. And that Tuesday, they were like, we still got to get animals. So you guys need to be here. So I'm in Washington, D.C., nation's capital, and I take the train every day to work. The train didn't work. I think they might have started that train the day after. So I had to walk to work, which is about 5 miles. Not bad.
Wow.
But, it was like
5
really
You say 5 miles or 5 minutes?
5 miles.
Yeah,
5
what
miles.
she says is not that bad. I'm like,
yeah.
that's
Okay, all right.
That's a lot.
Not that bad, but it was really, I don't know if you ever saw that movie 28 Days Later.
I have not.
UK zombie movie, and the gentleman woke up. Oh, like I Am Legend, right? Just woke up. There's nobody there. I mean, it was the most eeriest feeling. And then, being at a zoological institution, you're used to dealing with all types of scientists and people, husbandry staff, nutrition staff, education staff. because we have a lot of, students from high school to middle school. Everybody's gone. The only people here were, they said mission essential, right? So you come on a zoo, it's a ghost town. I mean, it was scary. It was nothing, right? And then it was COVID, so you couldn't really get in. If you maintain your 6 feet distance, right? So it was tough. I mean, and then we have to worry about the animals, right? So we had to worry about our safety, and then we had to worry about the animals. And I was still
Were you concerned at all that it would spread? I mean, we didn't know that much at the beginning. Was that a concern at all?
My biggest concern was that we were going to lose animals here.
Yeah.
Right. And now, who's going to make this call, right? What physician is going to make a call that somebody has died from COVID? What veterinarian is going to make a call that that an animal has died from COVID, right? You've got to really be sounding your diagnosis because you're sending up the alarms. So I still was always in touch with, my brothers and sisters in Asia. Hey, are you guys getting any animals getting infected? How are you diagnosing things of that nature? And we made it here for a while, but we hit a speed bump, and our large cats, our tigers and lions, became infected with COVID, and they had real bad clinical signs. This is right after the Bronx Zoo's large cats that got infected, and we have recently hired a very fantastic veterinarian, Dr. Sarah, and Dr. Sarah was at the Bronx when their large cats were infected, and she was working with us, and our large cats got infected, and she took helm of that ship, and we started taking care of those animals daily. And she was overseeing those treatment modalities. And, we're talking about coming in 4 or 5 in the morning and then administrating all type of therapeutics to each individual lion and tiger. So it was scary. I mean, they had real bad signs. Colloquial term in veterinary medicine is to say they are ADR, ain't doing right. And it looked bad.
That sounds very official.
The prognosis, the prognosis looked grave. It looked, when we say grave, it's like 1 foot in. It looked like they were all going to die. But due to the care that was given by the husbandry staff and then my vet team, we were able to get through that storm. But we still worry about it daily. Like we worry about our gorillas, our apes, the rest of our primates. There's a lot of species we have here that are susceptible. And if you Google it, you'll see there was a lot of animals around the world, personal and at parks like ours, that have died from COVID. And so it's always a thing that's still on our list. We have an animal that's ADR. We see where is it at on that susceptibility list, and do we need to test for it? How do you think we test for COVID in the animals?
No. I can't. I'm just thinking us. We're in the nose. How difficult that would be on an elephant.
I don't know. They're going to the nose. Is that right, Mr. Neal?
Okay. No, we're not going to the nose.
Okay, well,
we're collecting feces, and we send that off a PCR. Yep. That was the other thing. That's the first thing I asked them. I said, "Hey, I was calling my buddies in Asia. I'm like, hey, we work at the zoo, man. How you guys over there diagnosing COVID in these animals?" And I know you're not going in a little, household dog with a Q-tip, the swab, and he's like, no. He said, we're doing feces in the PCR. I'm like, all right. So that was like.
I think the doctors over here are probably happy they're doing the nose.
Yeah, for
right.
Sure.
If I had to say
that.
So
am I.
Could you
I'm
imagine
happy
doing that to the lion?
Yeah, you're not doing that. So what are you doing when you're not playing around with all these animals? Like, what are you doing for fun?
I think it's weird that you keep saying playing around with
animals.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
Well, I guess.
What do you do in your spare time?
Operating. Yeah, that's probably a better question, maybe.
But when you're not playing with animals, what do you do? Back in America, over in Asia, it was different, right? When I wasn't dealing with, teaching and dealing with animals, I was trying to learn the culture. I was trying to learn the right. I was, exercising. I was taking martial arts. I was, trying to learn about spirituality and, meditating and all of that good stuff, and trying to see where exactly I could travel to learn, not as a travel snob, but to learn new things and to see see cities that I've always wanted to see, right? So now in America, what I try to do is in my spare time, I still try to read, catch up on some things that I missed, i.e. DC comic books. I got the app. I still play a little bit of video games at times, that helps me rewind. My brother, he got into a career field that I never, like I said, every career field, every profession has a certain degree of skill or science to it, and he got into a field that I never, we look at it as entertainment. He works in film and TV. You just look at it as entertainment. Like you think everybody's out there having fun. I didn't understand the exact science behind it, especially it wasn't until I got over to to East Asia, and I'm understanding all the work that Shaw Brothers did to build an empire, to build this big library of movies, the skill set, the business mind they had behind, but also the creativity. How do you make a movie? What's the script? Where are these actors coming from? I didn't realize how much the degree of skill you had to be in that field in general. So I watch a lot of movies, and I watch a lot of movies with the director cuts, and trying to figure out what is the story behind this movie. And then my other question is the setting a character, right? So like the new Batman, I'm upset they keep changing the Batman. I'm a DC guy, but I felt as though that Gotham City was a character in that movie, right? So I get lost into that. And the other thing I do, which is people always I guess we just hit casually talking. It's hard because a lot of people don't know this. I'm a bird guy. I watch birds. I'm a bird watcher. So I got my binoculars here. I wish I could turn my camera so you can see. So every veterinary hospital in a zoo in America is hidden. So we're hidden, and I'm in the middle of DC, a DC park, and I can look at right here at lunch, and I'm looking out my window, nothing but trees, and I can sit here and bird watch. So I love watching birds. Birds are my favorite animal, but birds of prey are my favorite type of bird. So, playing video games, still trying to learn some languages and bird watching and trying to stay active. That's pretty much what I do in my spare time.
Well, we hope in some of your spare time that you find your way back to campus to visit with us. We'd love to meet you in person, maybe see you at homecoming coming up or something like that. That would be really neat to be able to,
that'd be great.
Connect. So it has been really fun to talk to you and get to know you. And we love your full circle story. So thanks so much for coming on with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Hopefully I didn't bore you all too much.
Oh, no.
Rowan always has a special place in my heart. And any of the guys that I graduated with, guys and girls, and especially my crew that I hold very tight with, we love that. We love that campus and everything the university and everything that it provided for us. I mean, it was a blast, I still, every time I hear Rowan, I just smile. Like I remember, and I say, let me stay on topic, but I just remember being on the Amtrak train coming from visiting my father, coming back to DC, and I woke up and I looked to the left, and it was two individuals that had shirts on that said Rowan University. I was floored.
You're like, hey, I'm there. I'm an alum.
Yeah, I stopped and introduced myself, and and I kept it moving, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, Rowan, like, oh, with the Rowan,
Rowan's everywhere now. It's crazy. Well, we're all alums on here too, so we can.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good to know.
Rob
good to
and
meet you all.
Yeah, Rob and I are WGLS alums as well. So.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, so we have a strong love as well.
Yeah.
So it's always super fun to get to talk to a fellow alum and see where everybody's at and what they're doing. And you're definitely doing cool things. So
And if you're up, if we can find any stingray, we'll fry some up for you if you can.
Hey, man, I look, I'm pretty sure we got a Korean mart somewhere around Rowan, and we'll go ahead and we can get a lot of that good stuff. We can make it happen.
A lot to unpack there, Jess.
I know. I was really. Well, first, I always start off casually in an interview talking about Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Well, who doesn't? Really?
I know.
It's really it's a great icebreaker.
I was really intrigued, but such a deep story. I think the thing that really stuck with me the most was really how he was a kid that wasn't really sure what he wanted to do. But really, then when we dug in, he was like, oh, I kind of always knew that I wanted to do this. So, like, how neat is that, right? That he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he just pursued it.
Yeah, and all the different spots that he visited. From a kid from the Bronx who went international and then works his way back to D.C.
I know.
And how many other interviews, by the way, are we going to squeeze in that involve feces? You know what I mean? There's not many.
No, that was your biggest takeaway.
That was my biggest takeaway.
So now they're testing. Yeah. That is fun. I'm really glad that that's not how they're testing for COVID. So yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad that we don't have to go through that.
I think the doctors are more glad, most likely.
Yeah, I think so too. So too.
But no, he was a great interview. Great things. It's always great to hear successful stories coming out of Glassboro, and obviously, Dr. Aziz is one of many alums out there just doing big things.
Yeah, something we can be and someone we could be Rowan proud of that we know is kind of representing Rowan University in the nation's capital, which is kind of the coolest place to be able to be and to say that you're a Rowan alum. So we're really excited to continue these kinds of interviews and hear your stories and talk to more alums about what you all are up to, because we know that we have some amazing, incredible alumni out there doing cool things. So if you're one of those alums, If you are a Rowan Proud alum out in the universe representing Rowan University and doing great things, please let us know. We would love to have you on the show. You can email us at alumni@rowan.edu.
You've been listening to Beyond the Brown and Gold on Rowan Radio 89.7 WGLS FM. You can find more episodes on your favorite podcasting platforms by searching for Beyond the Brown and Gold or Rowan Radio On Demand.